It's painful for a DM when an encounter is boring for your players. But when it's your BBEG, Big Bad Evil Guy, and the final battle of a months or years long campaign, it feels like a complete disaster. Whether this has happened to you yet or not, I've got 4 strategies for you today to ensure that your villain never ends up having its acronyms stand for Big Boring End Goal. A lot of villain reveals are kind of like badly written surprise parties. Nobody enjoys a pop-up villain who just suddenly appears at the very end of everything, and you're supposed to somehow have some kind of investment in his destruction. Too many DMs understandably treat their very well-crafted special villain as if it was a rare collectible to be kept on a shelf and protected until it's time to finally bring it down for that one special day. Unfortunately, without any kind of actions beforehand to establish that kind of emotional excitement about the big bad evil guy, those final encounters are pretty much doomed to fall flat. Your villain, instead of fine china collectibles on the shelf, needs to be more like a bad rash. Unpleasant, recurring, and impossible to ignore. One reason that the adventure Curse of Strahd is so beloved is because the villain is everywhere. Strahd not only interacts with the group on a semi-regular basis, but he can be felt everywhere in his world. So let's talk about how to create that for your villains. The first strategy is to use indirect action to build up hype for your villain. Leave blatant clues that tie back to your villain so that your party can see them and exclaim, "That scoundrel," and know that he is causing trouble in their life or in the world around them. Have his influence be felt through the minions that he sends against them specifically, and that reference him and are obviously in his employ, service, or enslavement. If he's actually active in the world, it's not going to be just direct interactions with the party, but rumors and tales spread by NPCs can increase the notoriety so that people start looking forward to encountering this mysterious villain. The second strategy involves getting your villain in your party's face. Staging a direct encounter where the villain can show up to gloat or to engage the party at an early stage is an amazing way to build engagement, and one of the reasons that Curse of Strahd lands so well. Of course, because Dungeons & Dragons favors players significantly and your villain might be in some way vulnerable, it's important that you craft for yourself fairly solid escape plans, preferably more than one, so that your villain is going to be able to get away from the situation that they're in. And of course, you want to come up with in-game natural reasons why, if the villain is capable of just crushing the party, that he doesn't do so. Sometimes those plans fail, and your villain will either get crushed unexpectedly or will unexpectedly crush your party. If the players outsmart the escape, it's important that you let them have that win instead of contriving something completely outrageous and weird. Instead, think about what would happen in the story narratively if this villain suddenly disappeared. Who would step up into the vacuum of power? Who might be the next villain that the party needs to face? And what unintended consequences could come from his death? Similarly, if the villain happens to defeat the party, is he really looking to have each of them killed, or could he find a way to use them since he's managed to capture them so handily? Finding ways to fail forward in those situations, as it is commonly known, can be a fun exercise, and if you happen to plan it out before it comes to pass, it definitely makes it feel less contrived. The third strategy for improving your villain's presence in your campaign is to increase how personal their connection to the party is. Killing or harming a favored NPC or pet is a surefire path to creating a huge hatred for the villain in question. Similarly, if there are places that your party is invested in and the villain can somehow redecorate in an unpleasant manner, then that's going to gain some further engagement as well. It's possible for you to go as heavy-handed as stealing things from the players, but it's a path that you have to use very sparingly and with great care, as it can seriously infuriate a party to lose the things that they have worked so hard for. This isn't a matter of the characters getting annoyed, it's a matter of truly ticking off the players at your table if you abuse the opportunity to create that kind of situation more often than on an incredibly rare basis. Personally, I would avoid that as anything except a last resort, or something that has a huge amount of foreshadowing so that the party knows that a particular item that they have is something that is desired by the enemy and is likely to be stolen at any expense. Finally, the fourth strategy is to layer the relationship between the villain and your party. It's important that your villain is not just a one-note mustache twirler, but somebody with a layered motivation. By creating a villain that the party might be conflicted about in even a simple way, or that they might be able to understand the motivation that is behind the actions that he's taking, you increase the investment that they have in the situation and help them to get down into the heads of their characters and the head of the villain that you've placed against them. Similarly, by taking the backstories and the former actions that your party has taken and weaving that into the story of your villain, you can tie a tighter mesh that is going to make it more exciting for that player when this piece of their story becomes the main focus because of the villain's involvement. Weaving those backstories into the main story of your plot is almost always going to improve the game that you end up with. And it's definitely going to make the big bad evil guy's reveal at the end a little bit more exciting for your players. I went ahead and created a checklist that you can use to improve your villains and other NPCs and make sure that they're ticking all the boxes to be an exciting part of your adventures. If you think that might help, check the link in the description below so that we can all improve our games of Dungeons & Dragons together.